Well, hey guys, and welcome to Ministry Hangouts with Pastor Greg Surratt, and we have got a great panel of guests today. I think we're going to have some fun. We've been having some fun on Periscope right before this, and having some fun just in the pre-show meeting and discussing what we're talking about. But I want to throw it over to our it's not Ministry Hangouts without Pastor Greg Surratt. So, Pastor Greg, how are you doing today? And tell us just a little bit about why we do these Hangouts.
Thanks, Shawn. Sometimes it is Ministry Hangouts without Pastor Greg. When my technology fails, then it's with Shawn Wood, and it's great. It's a better show, to be honest with you. But, hey, I'm glad everybody's with us, and this is going to be an exciting day. Well, basically what we do is we take 45 minutes, an hour, whatever, and we talk about subjects that, especially if you're in some kind of vocational ministry, that are kind of apropos to you, and we kind of kick it around. And today we're going to talk about sermon preparation or making a talk. And so this is broader than just, a preacher that preaches every week. There are a lot of, I know in our church, there's just a lot of people that that give talks in their business, or teachers to students. In fact, we give out little note sheets because we believe you cannot have a weekend without 3 points. That's number one. And number two, you've got to have a fill-in-the-blank note sheet. You don't have one of those, people can't grow. And so what people all the time will bring their note sheet to me and say, hey, I preached this, or I spoke this at our motivational meeting at our business or whatever, and it was really, really helpful. And they even sometimes give me credit. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's the gospel is free. I really don't care whether I get credit or not. I probably stole it somewhere, from one of you guys usually. And, so this week what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about sermon prep. Shawn, why don't you kind of tell us who's on with us today?
Absolutely. You guys, I'll give you a chance just to kind of tell us who you are and what you're up to right now and what's going on in your life. First, we have Pastor Derwin Gray. How are you doing, Pastor Derwin? Just tell us a little bit about your church and what's going on.
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm the founding and lead pastor of Transformation Church right in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. We've got 4 campuses, 2 in prisons, 1 in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and 1 in Indian Land, South Carolina. And I've been hanging out with my family. I'm on actual preaching sabbatical. I haven't preached for 6 weeks. So I've been doing some assistant football coaching and watching my daughter grow up and mature, and my wife and I hanging out. I just got the first copy of my brand new book, which Pastor Greg endorsed, The High Definition Leader. And so I've just been holding this thing because I scored a 16 on my ACT to get into college, which was about as low as I could score. And to think now that I have an honorary doctorate and halfway through my earned doctorate, I'm just in awe of what God is doing. So yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And I'm afraid of you still. You're my friend. You're my friend. We talk on the phone regularly. But you were a football player, for a lot of people, Indianapolis and Charlotte and the NFL. So I have an NFL question. Did you ever, during preseason, get mad at somebody because they didn't pay you back, let's say $600, and so you jacked their jaw and broke it? And did you ever do that? Do you see it happen very often? Not that it happens.
No, that's unheard of. When I played in the NFL, there was this respect and honor code, and guys would get into tussles. You'd throw each other around, you keep your helmet on, then afterwards you're good. But if you're an NFL player and you're fighting over $600, there's some deeper seated issues. But to hit the quarterback and break his jaw means you are forever in the purgatory of never playing in the NFL ever again or in Canada. You're done. You're finished.
That's kind of sad, really.
It is. I have never heard of it going to that level.
Wow. And so you're committing to me right now that you will never blindside me with a jack to the jaw. Is that what you're saying?
Well, First of all, I love and respect you way too much. Second of all, like, I'm a gentle teddy bear. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she threw the javelin in college. So whenever we got issues at church where people don't like me, I just sick her on them with the javelin in hand, and end of discussion. It's over.
Wow.
So, yeah, like, I'm the gentle teddy bear.
Good. All right, Shawn, I jumped in and hijacked it. Go on and introduce the rest of our guests.
That's all right. Speaking of hijacks, last month, right as we went live on ministryhangouts.com, the site was hijacked and taken over, and that just happened again. So we are recording, but we are so popular that as soon as we go live, the site is being hijacked and sent and rerouted. So if you see that, if you're a viewer, you're probably watching this in the retro. You're probably watching this in the archive, and we apologize right now for whatever you just saw when you tried to go to the site. So we are fixing that right now. In fact, if I can, I'm gonna say, Michael, Rich, you guys jump in and introduce yourselves, and I'm gonna just real quickly be texting to try and get that taken care of.
After you, Michael, jump in.
All right, I'll jump in. I'm real good at just filling in dead time. I mean, that's really what people bring me in for. We've got some time to kill. Michael Lukaszewski, and I spent about 10 years being a youth pastor, a student pastor, and then in Atlanta we planted a church and did that for about 5 or 6 years, and it was an awesome experience and a growing experience for me personally. And then the last few years I've worked with church consulting companies and kind of helping churches and pastors. This last year started a brand new organization called Church Fuel, and we've got some different online courses and stuff that pastors can take. A lot of things on systems and strategies, and growth, and we've got some stuff coming out on pastoral health, which is so important. And so just really excited to be able to do what I do. I work with 3 or 4 churches personally, one-on-one, kind of throughout the year, and then we've got some online resources as well. And I always love preaching. So I'm in a weird season of life right now. I'm not preaching every week to the same people. I'll do a lot of guest preaching, so I don't have that pressure that you guys have of coming up with something or having something fresh every week. I actually, on probably about half the Sundays, sit in church now, and so I'm now on the other side of having to endure sermons. Luckily, I go to North Point, so the sermons I endure are awesome, and so it's interesting being on the other side of things. So that's what I'm doing now.
Michael, I always, when we have guest speakers here at our church, every once in a while somebody will say, "Wow, they were really good," and it's like, what they're saying is that you're not, and why aren't you as good as they are? And so I'll just say, you know what? If I could preach one sermon over and over
that's it.
and over
One-hit wonder
again, I'd be good too.
That's all. That's really all you need if you're in my position now. Is you just need one greatest hit. That's it.
That's it. That's awesome. Good. All right. Rich, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Rich. I'm a part of church, lead part of a church in New Jersey called Liquid Church. So we serve the Manhattan-facing suburbs of New Jersey, or actually we're changing that to communities, Manhattan-facing communities of New Jersey, because we're actually looking at taking a step into some of our more urban environments here in New Jersey. So we're a 4-campus church, about to become 6 actually this fall. So a huge inflection point coming in the life of our little church here. About 3,500 people attend annual or weekly. That's like real numbers, not senior pastor numbers. That's like who actually attends. Unlike the other guys on this call, I kind of lead from that second chair. So I don't primarily speak every Sunday, but support the systems behind our primary teacher, a guy by the name of Tim Lucas. So excited to be here. I also blog at a blog called Unseminary, which we try to provide practical resources, stuff they didn't teach in seminary. So super glad to be here. Respect the other guys on the call. I'm looking forward to learning. I've got my notepad here. Looking forward to jumping in.
That's awesome. Well, I've got my notepad too, because I want to learn new every day. I'd like to, on the last day of my life, have learned something new. I hope this is not the last day of my life, but I can learn every day about this whole preaching thing, because it's an incredible honor to be able to do it, incredible pressure to be able to do it well, and we all need to learn from one another. And so let me just jump in with a couple of questions. First of all, how far out do you plan your messages, and are they series, individual messages? Let's just start there. Derwin, talk to me just a minute about how you do it. How far out do you plan?
Yeah, so right now I'm in the process of planning our entire fall. So meaning starting August 23rd all the way through November, and then I'll move into preparing for Christmas and the New Year. So we try to be 2 months out in advance, and that helps me to really have time to really pray, to do the exegetical cultural work, to be sensitive to the Spirit where God is leading us. And so in my context, I'm speaking to, I have to do this because I'm speaking to such a wide variety of people, ethnically, age-wise, social, economic-wise. So from illustrations to examples to even verbiage that I use, I have to be really meticulous and paint different pictures for different people in different situations and contexts in life. So for me, 8 weeks also gives our team, one of my aspects of leadership that I think is so important is my decisions impact others. And so as a teammate, I want to be as prepared in advance so that my team, the creative team, isn't caught in a difficult time crunch because I've been lazy. And so I like to be advanced. And then being a former NFL player, everything you do is with the future in mind. And so you're always preparing and moving somewhere. So being prepared and being advanced is really important. So 8 weeks to give you a number.
Okay, so let's say 8 weeks from now, what do you have on the page? I'm not asking for specifics, but do you have like a series? Do you have a message title? Or do you have the kind of the basic outline for a message 8 weeks from now? Or do you have like most of it written? What do you got on a page when you say
okay, so the first step I take is I have a questionnaire on what the sermon series is going to be about. It has about 8 questions. And so I fill that in, and then I begin, so once I understand thematically what the series is going to be, like case in point, we did a series called Together with One Voice, and it was on the book of Romans. And so it was from January to about 5 weeks ago. And so I will do the exegetical work, but I'll have the outlines done and the points that I want to make, and always finish every sermon with what's called a soul tattoo, which is the action point. So when I'm developing through the questionnaire, one of the primary questions is, what do I want people to think about God? What do I want people to feel about the gospel? And what do I want people to do with what God has done for them and what he wants to do in them? And so that'll drive the creative aspect of it. And so like going into the fall, we're going to start a series called Modern Family, where I'm going to walk through basically the Old Testament. And so I believe in what's called Christocentric redemptive preaching, that all of the Bible is about Jesus. So we're going to look at Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. We're going to look at various topics, but it's going to run the theme with Jesus is the greater Adam. The church is the greater Eve. You know, and just continue that theme because we want to soak our folks in the gospel, knowing that it's about Jesus. So I have an outline done, and then as the week comes about, I'm able to fill in that outline with the content, but also strategically with what's happening in the world. When the tragedy in Charleston took place, I was able to integrate that into our sermon context. And so racial reconciliation isn't like a talk for us. It's our very ethos. So it felt very natural to who we are as a local church. But I forget who said it. Maybe it was like Martin Lloyd-Jones. You know, you got to have the Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other hand. Of course, no one reads the newspaper, so you need your Samsung Galaxy S6 because it's a superior device to any other one, and then you get all your information.
Because you can't afford an iPhone. Okay.
That's right.
That's right. Right there, Derwin. I got my S6 right here.
All right, that's one.
Rich, you got one?
Right here, baby.
I love you.
Hey, Shawn, do you have some kind of mute button that you can, like, kick people off?
I think there's something supernatural going on right now.
Hey, Pastor Greg, if I could add just one last aspect of it. You know, you're a mentor, a father, a friend, and your story of, you know, growing up in the church and like your whole family's preachers all the way back to Noah, and but for me, like a total pagan.
Yeah.
And so this aspect of preaching is so so personal. The weight and the beauty and what God has done in my life, I hope that that's the posture that we go forward as we take the pulpit, that, man, I am preaching not as an authority over the text, but as someone who has the grace of Christ over them. And like, this is weighty, weighty stuff. Now, Jesus carries it, but there's this intentionality that I approach the pulpit the way I approach the game. That, man, there's going to be some winners, there's going to be some losers, and I got a role to play in this, but I play better knowing what Jesus has done for me. And so sometimes I'm listening to preachers and I'm like, so has Jesus, like, exegetically you were great topics, great illustrations, but what has Jesus done in you? Like, how has this text wrecked your life? And then, are there tears in your Bible as a result of what he's done through this text and what you're believing he's going to do through you as you preach the text?
Good stuff. With me, there would be tears on my iPhone because that is my Bible. But that's good. That's good stuff. I like it. Hey, Rich, what about you guys? How far out do you plan?
Yep.
Do you do series? How does it work?
Yeah, so we preach in series. We do typically 12 series a year, so they tend to be 4 weeks in length, 3 or 4 weeks. We, believe it or not, we did a series last fall on porn that was 6 weeks long, and it was probably 5 weeks too long. Don't tell that to Tim if he's listening.
We've done a couple of those. Yeah.
And so they tend to be about a month long. Now, when you talk about how far in advance, I remember when. I was first trying to learn from, a lot of kind of name brand churches, I would hear these guys get up and say, like, we're planned 3 years out. We have a preaching calendar for 3 years, and we have a year. And I'm like, I found that really oppressive. I'm like, gosh, how do you get that far out? So for us, what we do, Tim, and we try to, in all our communication, but preaching particularly, we try to be really responsive and try to respond to what's actually happening in our people's lives. We can talk more about that later. But so what we do is we do plan out a year in 3 different runs, and actually you can see behind me here is kind of our the calendar, and so we plan kind of generally a January to April, or kind of January to Easter, really functionally run, and then there's kind of the summer run, the doldrums. People go away, they go to the shore. The Jersey Shore is actually somewhere you want to go in the summertime. So kind of May through August is kind of the middle run, and then there's a September through December. Generally, as we come into each of those runs, we have good clarity on where we're going for those 4 months. And then we're similar to what Derwin was saying. We're much clearer kind of the next series out, so 2 months out. For us, each sermon has, we can get into this later too, has 3 essential ingredients: scripture, symbol, story. So obviously the scripture it's based on. For us, symbol, or which is literally like almost like the object lesson, the physical thing that we're trying to attach to the lesson we're trying to tell, and then story. Generally, we have those 6-8 weeks out, and then once the series starts, those are solidified, and whoever is preaching is then taking those 3 ingredients and piecing them together into the message. So it's it kind of goes from we have a sense of where the year's going, and then as we get closer, it becomes clearer, in our mind. Classically, I would say we're 6-8 weeks out. We have a really good idea where we are 6-8 weeks out, and then a little better for each of those falls. So we're in a hinge right now at the end of August. So this is always the funny time of year when we have those hinges between those 3 phases of the year. There can be those times where it's like, well, we've kind of come to the end of our plan here. We're just firming up the rest of the year as we speak.
Cool. All right. What about Michael? What do you see? I know that you're not. You've already explained that you're not in a weekly, kind of a deal, but you've helped a lot of pastors. You've worked with and been a part of companies that actually specifically get into this. What do you see out there as far as planning ahead? And give me some insight on that.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes you talk to people about planning ahead, and I don't think anybody here on this Hangout is this way, but there's almost this pushback to planning as if somehow it contradicts the work of the Holy Spirit.
Come on now, I'm an old Pentecostal.
I know. I'm just trying to get bring a little Jesus into it, bring a little Holy Spirit into it.
All right, good.
But it's the planning is not for the Holy Spirit's benefit. Planning is for our benefit. God can say whatever He wants and do whatever He wants, but I'm a bit of a knucklehead and need some time to be able to process. So what we used to do when I was preaching every week, and what we kind of see as best practice, because everything I did that worked, I learned from somebody else. Everything I did that didn't work, I came up with it on my own. So we do kind of what Rich was describing, where we plan the year in concept, and we know we want to do a few things through the year. We know when Mother's Day is. I went to a church one time that they were in a service on spiritual warfare, and ended up talking about Satan on Mother's Day because that's just the way they planned it.
That's
and
sharp.
It was like we could have avoided that. That could have been fixed pretty easily. So we planned.
Michael.
Yeah.
But what if a husband thought that was very appropriate for his mother-in-law?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, there were a lot of elbows being flung around in the chairs that day. See. So we planned it conceptually in the year, and then what we see a lot of churches do is if they're doing a series or a book of the Bible, it works the same way. To where whether you're looking ahead about 8 weeks, and I remember one of my jobs as the senior pastor communicating was it was up to me to create what we called a series overview, and I would have to come up with here's how many weeks it is. Is it light? Is it heavy? Is it serious? Is it, what does it feel like? Here's the topics, here's the scriptures, here's the passages, here's the main idea. That way our worship team, our creative team, our people could plan on that. And then from a message standpoint, from like literally finishing the message, I was not, months and months and months ahead in that. I was about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of it. So the week of, I was done with that the week of. So I didn't have that pressure. And we try to help guys understand this too, is there's a lot of pressure to get that sermon done. It's the most important thing. We ought to tithe off of our time and give God the first fruits of our time and get it done earlier so that we can, have time to listen, have time to process. And so year in concept, couple series out, as it drills it down, and then a couple weeks out like the message is done. And honestly, finishing your message, if you just back it up a couple days and send it to somebody, get that thing done on Thursday. If you're a Friday, get it done on Friday. Just back it up one day. Get it done on Thursday. Email it to 5 or 6 people and say, does this speak to you? Is this good? And that's what we used to do.
We'll tell you how kind of we handle that here at Seacoast in a few minutes. But Shawn, you've been a part of our staff, but I want you to talk about yourself because you're a planner, and one of us in this conversation is not, and we'll get to him in just a minute. But so how do you do it? What do you plan way ahead series?
I'm really different, and I know that I'm super different. I don't know that anybody should do what I do, but I know the series for a year. Every month, I extend my calendar 1 month in my spreadsheet, and I pick the next series, which is a year away. So I know that series. I am typically, in this summer, honestly, I use some of this margin to relax some, but typically I have 13 weeks out of finished transcripts, so I'm done. Like I've written the transcript, I've processed them, I've kind of gone through that process, and then they're sitting there, and my mind's always working on those, I always think about them, So then the week of, I pull out something I wrote 13 weeks ago, and I start to kind of relive that again that week and really get into that week. And we have a practice on Tuesdays, and so I practice the whole message on Tuesdays. And so that's kind of how. Now, what's good about that is if there's a week when I just don't feel like writing sermons, or I'm in a bad mood, or I just don't want to do it, I'm 13 weeks ahead, so I can do that. I can kind of just relax. And then, like this summer has just been particularly busy for us. We've grown a lot. Things have been busy, and I've had some margin to go. I just don't feel like writing new stuff. I mean, I'm obviously taking the stuff that's been written and tweaking it and adjusting it as it needs to be adjusted. And then within that plan, I mean, like what Michael was saying too, I mean, at least twice a year, I'll go in and change an entire series. At least twice a year, I'll blow up a couple of times a year more. I'll blow up a whole sermon and go, I wrote that 13 weeks ago. I thought it was great, and now it's awful. So I'm blowing the whole thing out, starting over. So that's going to happen every now and then, but I just sleep better at night knowing I've got those things in the hamper and just the way that I process.
And then there's me.
Yeah.
And I remember when Shawn came on our staff, he came from a large church in the Dallas area that's pastored by a guy named Junior. And so Shawn became a part of our teaching team, and I felt like he was trying to make me into Ed Young Jr., you know, and have to draw circles on the page and arrows to different stuff, and you know, alliterate everything, and be way far, you know, ahead in advance. And that's just not me, you know. I mean, I learned a lot from that, but so we had some tension because I am in everything that I do. Part of it is because of the way I'm wired up, and we found out I have some unique memory issues that I've had all my life because I went to the doctor for a particular thing, and they did a brain scan, and they said, you know what, here, good news, bad news is, bad news first is that your brain didn't wire up the way it was supposed to when you were a kid. When you were born, the wires didn't connect. And my wife said, I knew there was something. I knew there was a problem somewhere. And the good news is that the brain rewired in various ways, but they said you have unique ways of looking at things, and that's part of it, but part of it is personality issues too. And I can't really remember, you know, what I preached honestly, what I preached yesterday or last week or whatever. In fact, I have to be real careful that I don't come across with the same stories and the same concepts, you know, 3 weeks later, because I don't remember. And so we've had to work around who I am.
Sure.
And I'm very spontaneous in the moment, in the day. I'm excited about whatever it is that I'm doing. But the flip side of that is that if you're going to have, you know, any kind of programming plan, you've got to plan ahead. And so, Shawn, we kind of developed some systems that helped us to do that. Do you remember any of that, or want to talk about a little bit about how that worked?
Interesting stories. I remember coming in to one of those original meetings, and it was on a Thursday. We were sitting around a table, and we met in the auditorium at that time. I don't know if you remember this. And, I mean, ideas are going all over the place for sermon stuff and songs we could do and graphics that we could make and everything. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is incredible. This is so creative. And then at some point during the conversation, I realized it was for that weekend. Like, we were talking about, like, where are we going to go in 3 days? And
people full of the Holy Spirit can do
full
that.
of the Holy Spirit. And what we did, and we did not, I probably tried to, but we didn't need to make you into anybody else. You had done quite well without being done that. But we did get to a Monday, starting that on Monday rather than Thursday, like Michael was saying. And over the course of time, we kind of backed that up, and we were able to kind of go, okay, let's just start on Monday at least. That gives the creative teams a little bit more time. But then we really wanted to do some creative things. I mean, we wanted to be able to do some bigger things and graphics. We started printing bulletins, you know, for the series and stuff like that. And so what we were able to do, and I think you really got comfortable with, is there was a series that was kind of planned out, and you didn't have to think about it much. You just had to be excited about the general concept, but you knew you were going to be able to dial it in really tight to a topic on Monday, and we just had a general series. And so we would plan our creative elements, our songs, graphics for our series. All of that was around a much, much broader thing called the series, and then that gave you the latitude and really to work within how you like to work, to dial that in a way that was there. And then sometimes we would have a series plan, like called 24, based on the series 24. I don't know if you remember this one. And you would come time to that, you went, I'm just not interested in doing that anymore. I'm going to do a series on the Da Vinci Code, which was very popular. And we had printed all the bulletins. We had done all the work for all the big stuff. We had kind of gotten songs ready, everything for 24. And you said, that's okay. I'm going to preach whatever I want to preach, and we can put it in the context of 24. And that series was a 4-week series, Rich, which was probably about 4 weeks too long. The series was probably actually great, the Da Vinci Code part. We should have just recognized that, you know what, we're going to blow this whole thing up, and Greg's going to preach what is on his heart, and that. And so that's what I would say to the creative people out there maybe listening to this, and you're going, man, we need to get our pastor 13 weeks ahead. Your pastor's not me. We need to get him 4 weeks ahead. Your pastor's not Derwin. We need to do this. You need to figure out how does your pastor best create, and then create a system around that you can create other things around that, but you're not going to change them, and you shouldn't change them. So work with what you got is what I'd say. And I just put to bless that church.
Totally. To underline what you were saying there, Shawn, I totally agree. I think particularly for folks, so I've often been on the other side of the conversation working with senior pastors who are teaching, and as long as there's they need to understand that the creative people are always going to want more time. So whatever time that you give them, they're going to want more. So that's just the reality of it.
And money.
And more money. That's true. So if you're giving them 13 weeks, I'm not sure we can pull this off in 13 weeks. We need another 5 or 6 would do it. And so a part of it is working as a communicator to understand that tension is always there, and then working with your creative people for them to understand. And then the flip side, most teaching people I've run into want to respond as quickly as possible to what's happening in that moment, because what Derwin said, which I don't want you to miss, it is about your own personal life change. God is doing something in your life, and you need to share that. You need to get out and tell people about that. And by definition, for some people, you're like, we got to talk about that 13 weeks from now. That's old news. I want to talk about what God's doing in my life today. And so, you do have to work with that tension, and I think it's okay as long as both sides of that equation acknowledge that there's a tension there, acknowledge that you have a contradictory need to the other person. I think you can go a long way. At the church I was at in Canada, a guy by the name of Bruxy KV, great communicator. Bruxy's process, it's bad to even think this. He reads literally about 1,000 pages a week. He's an incredible reader. And he begins his sermon prep after dinner, actually originally after his kids went to bed, on Saturday night. Then he would prep all night long, and where we ended up was he would finish around 3 or 4 in the morning. We'd have a graphics person show up and do slides for him at that point. We'd make the sermon notes. He'd get up and preach 3 of them, 5,000 people, and then he'd go to bed at about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday afternoon.
I like this man.
Crazy talk. It's crazy talk.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started working there, early on, it was exactly one of those. We showed up, we had all this stuff printed. He showed up on a Sunday morning. I was like, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to do this series. We're going to do something else. Over time, that's shifted, but the core reality of his preparation hasn't changed. We've added stuff to it, but at the end of the day, that's the process by which God's used in his life. And I realize there's danger there. I understand that, but you kind of just have to live with those realities.
Yeah, we have to. Is it Andy that said you have to recognize whether it's a problem to be solved or a tension to be lived with or figured out? And we've got to, on all sides of the equation, honor and respect one another, treat one another like we would like to be treated, and kind of figure it out. Now, what we've done here is we have taken me out of the long-term process to some degree, because we know there needs to be a long-term process. And so we have, like 6 months in advance, we've got our series ideas and all of that. And the way we do it is we have someone else, like a Shawn, who shepherds that process. They come, they interview me, talk to me about what's on my heart, those types of things. And then we'll come into a series planning meeting, which we have like monthly, that goes into another, 3 or 4 months ahead, 5 months ahead, or whatever, and talk through series a little bit, and then divide up what it could be. And it's not all on me, because I'm not really good at that. What I'm good at is communicating what I'm passionate about in the moment. And so we recognize that, but we also recognize we have to have planning. And just like this week, I think it was on here, I talked about it on the Periscope deal just before this, but we're in a Joshua series. It was going to be a real short 5-week Joshua series, and I love going through the Bible. I just like doing that. And now it's become, and we do this regularly. It's a 5-week series followed by another 5-week series, but they're all on Joshua, and it's like Joshua 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's going to be Joshua 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But they've got different topics, to hang them on. And we got Max Lucado to come and wrap it up, because he just wrote a book on Joshua. So it all works, and it really looks like we planned it out well. And we did to some degree. But when they said you're going to preach on Joshua 5 now, a lot you say that about a senior pastor of a major church. Somebody's telling him what he's going to preach on. That I'm comfortable with that. I mean, I was a part of the original process, but I also submit myself to this part of the process. And then give me the topic, and I'll get excited about it. I'll get God on what that particular passage is about. So that's kind of how we do it. Now, could we? Let me give you one more thing about the Seacoast deal, and then we'll move on. Here's kind of our process on a week of. On Monday, we have what we call message planning, which is on Monday afternoon at 1:30, and the teaching team and a few other of the creatives are in the room, and we are basically dealing with that week, because that's kind of how we roll on that. We've had some other meetings that go with weeks ahead, and we want to come out of that week knowing that we've got a good outline for the teacher that's going to teach that week. Sometimes they come in with a great outline. Sometimes they come in, I really don't know how to get this passage together and this concept we're talking about, so we all help with that. And it's an incredible, wonderful, creative process. I'm a part of that process. So even though I'm not preaching, I'm speaking into the preachers that are preaching that week, which really has been just a cool deal. And then on Thursday, if you're preaching, you have to be done by noon. And then at 2 o'clock, we have a dry run in the auditorium with just about 10 people. And I submit myself to this process too. And then you sit down on the front of the stage and you get feedback. What worked, what didn't work. That's kind of the, send your message to somebody else. Well, we do it here. Yeah. And that is wonderful. I mean, for me, it's been things like, hey, Greg, we know that Friends was a great television show and good illustrations, but you know what? They canceled that like 40 years ago. And so how about we use Modern Family, or how about we use something else and give me some illustrations, and it works. And then everybody thinks I'm hip and cool watching all this stuff, which I'm not. I'm watching ESPN, and whatever, but, make application to it. And so then on Saturday night we have the same thing, feedback, and that's kind of how it works. So do any of you have any of that kind of a process? Derwin, do you guys have any kind of a week of? What's it look like week of in laying out a sermon?
Okay, so what we do on the week of, on Tuesday after our transformation time with our staff development, then we'll go into the weekend, and our creative team will be there, and so we'll review the past weekend and we'll review the future. So as we prepare for that Sunday message, 8 weeks ago, they already knew it was coming, so the illustrations, the imagery, all that has already been taken care of. And so as far as planning the sermons and that kind of stuff, I am pretty much the process, the theologian, the pastor of that. and then my team will come around me with illustrations as far as like I preached in a jail cell on Romans 6. You know, they'll come up with
I saw that.
and yeah, and so they help with that process, but I really enjoy, and we're only a 5-year-old church, so we're still babies, and so right now I'm the one governing the big ideas of that, the minutia of the theology, the practical application, but then my creatives will come around and we'll have the music set and also some illustrations or ideas, but on that Tuesday, they already knew 8 weeks ago what was coming. And so that's kind of how that process has begun to work for us.
Okay. How about, Shawn, how do you guys do it?
The week of?
Yeah, the week of.
Yeah. So for me, I just, surprisingly, even though I led the creative team of coming together and team approach to planning sermons at Seacoast, I kind of don't do the team approach as far as me working on my sermons. We do it for the creative pieces and for the whole thing. But I like to sit and write. So I'm kind of a writer by nature, and so I write out my whole transcript. I write just like I would preach it. I write every word of it, and then so on Monday I'm coming in to that and then reviewing it. So what I do is I get my iPad out. I got my microphone that I use. I use a handheld. Go Pentecostal, and I use a handheld, and I use that in my office, and I preach to my window right over here, just like I was preaching to to a crowd of 400 on Sunday, and in one of the auditoriums. And so I preach full on the whole sermon on Monday. That kind of helps me work the kinks out a little bit. So then I'll change some stuff and I'll adjust some stuff. I use quite a bit of stuff on a confidence monitor, and so I highlight everything based on colors of what's going to be on the confidence monitor, my key points, some of the transitionary statements, my scripture, different things that'll be on the confidence monitor. So I need to get all that, make sure that's highlighted the right way, make sure everything's color coordinated because I've memorized based on color coordination. So all that's kind of ready, and then the team gets all that into the computer and ready for a Tuesday at 2 o'clock run through. So on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, we do the same thing that we did at Seacoast, learned it there, loved it. It's torture, but yet it's also awesome because you really do get to work out what is, for most people, their first sermon. So I preach it to about 8 people sitting in chairs, taking notes, kind of doing that deal. And then after that, we sit down and go, hey, what could have been better? Were there any slides that were wrong? Could there have been a better use of Scripture? Did I have enough energy? And then how are we going to land the plane? That's a really big thing for me. One of the things that I don't like to think about is how am I ending the sermons. Even as far out as I am, I just kind of get to the end and go, I'll figure that out. I'll figure that out when I get there. And
yeah,
a lot of
times, that way. Yeah, yeah.
A lot of times I'll get to the end, even on a Sunday, and I don't know how I'm going to land the plane. Like I have no idea. Is it going to end up? Is it going to end big? So Cody's always on stage with me, our worship pastor. He's ready to either come in full blast with music. He knows I might start singing a song, and he'll play with me. He plays behind me, that whole deal. So we've started trying to practice that on Tuesday just a little bit. That's still tough, but we try to practice that a little bit, and then we make changes. And then honestly, I don't look at that again until Sunday. So after Tuesday, I'm done with that sermon. I don't want to look at it again. I don't review it again. I don't pick it back out anymore. I'm just done with it. And now I'm working on future stuff for the rest of that week, and different things going on. And so that's kind of our process of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so here we, teaching is a team sport at Liquid, and there's even no, it's really just one person on stage. We try to provide as much input as possible. We do a thing called Thursday Night Gospel Hour, which is very similar to kind of what you described that you're doing at Seacoast, with just a couple exceptions. So the goal for us organizationally is by the end of Thursday Night Gospel Hour, everything is done. So there's no more videos to be made. There's no more slides to be done. And so then Friday, Saturday, we're off. So our creative folks are done. Tim is done. There's no more work to be done. So that's why we do it on Thursday. So what happens is basically Wednesday, Thursday are major prep days. And then Thursday night, if Tim's teaching, he'll actually preach the entire message through as if there was 1,000 people in the room, but there'll only be 4 or 5 of us in there. We'll fire all the videos. He does, a typical message for him is somewhere around 40 or 50 slides. So there's usually a lot of visual content. And so we'll have, he'll fire all those on. We have basically a mock-up of whatever we have on stage. So we have these 3 screens that he preaches a lot of times in front of. We have a mock-up of that in our office. And he'll preach through that. We'll have a graphic guy there who will, go through all those. We'll have a video guy there, plus a few people depending on the content. So I'm at all of those. And then we'll have, like, if we're in a series right now on prayer, and so we have a couple of our kind of pastoral care people will be there through that series. If we're doing a family thing, we'll have some family folks there. So that'll kind of change up a little bit depending on who that is. And what we found that works really well is when we're bringing in other people on our staff to preach, because they'll sit through a bunch of those and they're seeing coaching happening. And Tim, even though he's our lead coach, similar to our lead pastor, similar to what you guys have said, he really models well taking feedback. And so he's really looking for, precision in his language. And we have kind of it's not a formula, but it's kind of a stuff that we want in every message. And so we're looking for those things in Thursday Night Gospel Hour as well. Did we hit what we were hoping to? Mm-hmm. And it's really at that for us, we wrap up how the message is going to end at that point. So we have a sense of, is it going to be high or low? What's the response song going to be? All that. But it's really there that that's finalized before we go into the weekend. The goal there is then all the people that are involved in the making of the message are completely, their heads are clear for a couple days. And then obviously, everyone has that Saturday night after dinner, you start getting nervous again. We got to do this thing on Sunday.
Yeah, that's why we've done ours on Thursday also, so that Friday will be an enjoyable day. And then we start firing up again about noon Saturday for our Saturday night service. There's so much, this has been good. There's so much more I'd like to talk about. I would love to sit down and talk about, okay, so it's just you and an iPad or keyboard or whatever it is and God in a room. How do you go about the process of writing a message? I'd love to talk about that, but we're 50 minutes into this podcast. I said it was going to be no more than an hour, and maybe we'll do another one. I'd really love to do that. I'm burning up to do it, so we'll see about that. What I want to do is let's just kind of close it down with just, is there anything that you are reading, that you've heard, conference you've gone to, and this is a great time for product placement, shameless self-promotion. We want to know what you're involved in that would help us to be better communicators. So, Derwin, what's going on? I want to see your book again. I want to know what you're doing, but talk to me. What are you fired up about?
Yeah, so on September 15th, my book, The High Definition Leader, Building Multi-Ethnic Churches in a Multi-Ethnic World, will be released. It's selling pretty cheap on Amazon right now, like half price. But
before you go further, let me ask a question about the book. Is that book a sit down, write it? Is that book a compilation of messages that you've done? How does it relate to that whole deal?
Yeah, so I wrote this book in 7 weeks in the midst of a capital campaign, in the midst of my doctorate, as well as everything that's going on at Transformation Church and being a husband and being a father. And so this right here, if I don't ever write another book again, this is the book that I want my legacy to be. I have a core conviction that the gospel, the good news, is about a king, a kingdom, and a people who are to image forth the glory of that king. And that kingdom and its people are a multi-ethnic people, a socio-economically diverse people, that people who are not yet God's people can look at and go, so that's what love across barriers and boundaries look like. So eschatologically, Revelation 5:9 is the trajectory of the church. So whatever the trajectory is in the future should have a bearing on our present. And so, you know, we look at the racial flare-ups around our country, and frankly, a sermon on police brutality once a year, or, you know, yeah, we need to be diverse, that's great, but to really intentionally have a gospel mandate to go about that. And a lot of times when I share it, people are like, well, what are you talking about? And if we just take our time to slowly read through the Bible, not from a Western American lens, but from a first century Second Temple Jewish lens, you see this radical picture of this Jewish Pharisee going to the Gonim, going to the women, and building these communities that were very different from a sexist, racist, class-filled society, that the gospel of Jesus Christ, this forgiveness that flows from heaven, unites people to create this eternity in the present. And so I'm on a personal quest to say, you know what? We have to change the scoreboard in the United States of America. In an ethnically diverse context, and we're not diverse, we're going to look foolish in about 30 years. Mm-hmm. And the big homogeneous churches of today are the future mainline churches that we see today that are abandoned and now becoming businesses.
Good, good, good. You're passionate about it. I can't wait till the book comes out. Hey, Michael, what's going on with you?
Well, I just pre-ordered Derwin's book, so I think that's what everybody should do. So we're coming out with a lot of stuff at Church Fuel, but we right now don't have anything for pastors on preaching. But what I would recommend is something that I helped create in the past, and that is a coaching program called Preaching Rocket. Mm-hmm. And my friend Jeff Henderson and Casey Graham and I put that together. And Derwin was actually on one of our events and talked about preaching. And I mean, I won't tell the other guys, but he was my favorite. But it's a great program. So I think it's still up at preachingrocket.com. It's a good program for learning the kind of the approach to crafting a message. An approach to kind of connecting with the audience. What I would say, just in closing, in 30 seconds, is if you're if you're like a lot of pastors probably watching this, they don't have a big staff, they don't have a big creative team, they don't have all this kind of stuff. It's them and their Bible, and right. Sunday's coming. And what I would say is just prioritize hearing from God and work hard on your message. Don't get up there and just preach the first thing you wrote. Work at it. How do you come up with a good beginning? You sit down and you think about something. You pray about it. You work hard on it. And if you work hard, you don't get good at anything just by going through the motions. You've got to work hard at it. Evaluate it. Ask somebody how you can be better, not your spouse, it's somebody else, and just work hard at it. And so you don't have to have a big budget. Pray and work hard, and I think that'll help.
That's good. That's excellent. Rich, what do you know?
Yeah, I was literally just taking notes on Derwin's book as well, so we'll be getting that. I think
3 pre-orders today. 3 pre-orders, Derwin.
Oh, just like
yes.
that.
Yes.
So you can drop by unseminary.com. We have a bunch of resources for communications folks, and happy to have you check that out. But to underline what Michael said there. If you're a church leader today, one of the things, it literally took me a long time to realize this because I'm not that smart. Churches that make impact in their communities, regardless of theological stripe, regardless if they're charismatic or put it on whatever spectrum you want to, they all have somewhere in there is a commitment to great teaching. Mm-hmm. There is someone who's spending a disproportionate amount of their time, effort, and energy on great teaching. And that's going to be hard to do if you're a single pastor. It's hard to find that time, but you need to carve that out in your schedule. You need to protect that time because it is the single best way that you could invest in your church is investing in your teaching. Teaching will your church as you go forward. And so I just encourage you on that, and also encourage as you get behind the scenes of large churches that are making an impact. Teaching becomes a team sport. There's more and more people involved in it. There may be one person that's actually preaching it, but as you've heard that today, it takes a multiplicity of people, and inputs to make it happen. So I just appreciate you having us on the show today. It was great to connect and be here.
Glad you guys are here. I would echo all of that. We've been at Seacoast, and then I pastored church before this, so I've been at all levels, from 50 people to 25,000 people, and the amount of time that I put toward the teaching hasn't changed in a whole lot of years. Even when we were small, very, very small church, I knew that it was important that we communicate well. And I cringe when I was going through some of the old messages this week. We're moving locations on some stuff, and so I found some really old ones, and I looked at it and I thought, oh no, I didn't preach that. No, that kind of thing. But from the very beginning, or from early on, I realized that the two things that I had to do that I couldn't outsource were leadership and teaching. And now I can outsource teaching more, but I still have to influence it. And so I said, what's the best time for me to, what's the best time personally for me, and then I'm going to invest that in teaching. And so, Monday morning, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning. If I don't feel like it's going really well on Wednesday, I'll cancel appointments and do Wednesday all day. But that's been that way for years, making that a priority. Because I knew that people need to hear from God on the weekend. That's the most important priority. And so anyway, wow, exciting stuff. Well, listen, Shawn, what's coming up, and what do we need to know?
Awesome. Yep. We've got some great shows coming up in the future months. Next month, we are looking at this new phenomenon called Periscope. But we got some great guests. I want to talk about how can we use this? Like, how can pastors use it? Pastor Greg got on Periscope right before this and stirred up a crowd, and so you can do that as well. But there's some people who are using that really great. We've got some great guests scheduled. Scott Williams being one of them, Carrie Newhoff, and Mac Lake, who are just using Periscope in 3 very unique and different ways, and we'll add some value to that. And then the following month, we're looking at how do you raise amazing PKs, and so you can spread the word and just talk, how do you do that? Like, is there a method? And we've got some great guests planned for that as well, and then some more topics to come. But you can check out all the previous archives at ministryhangouts.org. You can check out the podcast.
I think it is, isn't it?
Or .com, I'm sorry, .com, and then you can check out the podcast as well. So thank you guys so much, and we will see you guys next month. Thank you all for being on the call, too.